It comes as no surprise that Silent Hill F has proven to be very divisive. The combat, the narrative, and whether or not this game deserves to have Silent Hill in its title. I'm here to join in on that discussion, and if you were wondering why I've titled this video a sophomoric review of Silent Hill F, that is because this is only the second Silent Hill game I've completed, with the other being Silent Hill 2 Remake, which I was blown away by. And with that, my perspective may be considered sophomoric. To some, I'm sure that's your cue to turn off this video, but for others, I think there is value in sharing an opinion coming from that place, as a lot of the discussion I've seen around this game has been from the perspective of longtime fans of the franchise who I think have been more harsh than is deserved, because their beloved Silent Hill has been tampered with yet again. That's not to say I don't have complaints myself, and to be fair, if I was in their shoes, I would probably be doing the same thing, but I'm not in their shoes. So let's talk about this game with the gate wide open, and I should mention that there will be spoilers. On the topic of gates, the game opens up with the camera panning from our protagonist Hinako and her sister over to a torii gate. Then we slide our way through the gate and into the fog-filled world of Silent Hill F. This is a clever way to set the game into motion, given that torii gates are seen in Japanese culture as a boundary between our world and the spiritual world. From the onset, the game gives us the impression we are in a different world, or an altered version of the world our protagonist knows. The use of the torii gate is nice here, but also goes to show how this game sometimes expects knowledge of Japanese culture from the player, like this puzzle later on that requires knowing what a sakura tree looks like to solve. As an ignorant American, I had to Google what this tree looks like, so maybe next time if they could have the golden arches and Colonel Sanders logos instead of region-specific trees, that would be nice. The puzzles overall were a mixed bag for me. You got some weird, gross stuff, which I appreciated. You also got some puzzles that were pleasing to look at, like these painted wooden pieces that I liked looking at more than I actually enjoyed the puzzle aspect to. Same goes for this fox mural that looks awesome. I love the attention to detail here. But man, I came up with several combinations that I thought made sense with the riddle before I finally got it right. That annoyance of feeling like there was multiple solutions that made sense to me also applied to the scarecrow puzzle, but man oh man, this section was so good that I was not annoyed here. Reading the clues and then picking a solution was nerve-wracking, again because I think the solution was usually not obvious and I got it wrong several times. Picking the wrong scarecrow would lead you into a combat encounter, and picking the right one would point you to the next area along with a sigh of relief. The fidgety movements of these things was creepy in itself, and things got much scarier when you would hear the steps of an enemy approaching from behind. Turning to face them stops them in their tracks like Boo from Super Mario, but once they stopped, it would be hard to pick them out from the crowd of scarecrows. A little trial and error can help you spot the enemy, but you're also letting them get closer in the process. The field also gets more and more crowded as you progress through the puzzle. This whole experience I just thought was brilliant. The other highlight puzzle for me was the locker combinations in the school. Before we knew about the code and I saw this, I was like, oh god, we need to do math with square roots. But once the code was revealed to us, I thought this was great. It felt like something students would really do, or you probably did something similar growing up, you know? A simple code was the combination being the student's name, and then that led us to the note about another student's code sounding like a cry for help, which was SOS. This was so satisfying thinking about it for a minute, and then it finally dawned on me, and I was able to crack the code without looking it up. That felt great. The school in general was a highlight for me, with empty halls that were suddenly populated with enemies that you didn't know if they were going to attack you or not. Enemies up in the ceiling who got my heart racing but were a fake out. And then coming back to the stairs, this jump scare got me so good. The schoolyard outside I didn't find as special, but it was intense running for my life after realizing this large starfish enemy out there would come back to life. The enemies in this game I thought were good overall. There's not a crazy amount of enemy variety, but I wasn't expecting that after fighting just mannequins and nurses for what felt like 90% of Silent Hill 2, which did not bother me in Silent Hill 2 either, because I thought they were mixed and matched well and used effectively. The standard enemies in Silent Hill F I thought were effectively creepy with their movements and were terrifying when they got a hold of you. I like the slight variations in their appearance as you progress with the flowers growing on them. For the starfish looking enemy, I'll admit I was annoyed that it was able to revive in the schoolyard, but thought that mechanic was effective in this case, where we had to crank the handle while managing their respawn and other enemies appearing. The scarecrow enemies I thought were incredibly well implemented, like we saw in the scarecrow puzzle and elsewhere, not knowing if they would come to life or not. There are these enemies I like to call spitters, shout out Left 4 Dead. I like the look with the creepy looking cluster of heads. They can spit or vomit to hit you from range, and also use that to spew growths onto the ground to trap you. That mechanic was hit or miss for me, as I like the area denial making combat strategy more interesting, but in cases later on where there were multiple enemies, this did provide frustration at times. The hopscotch enemies I like the look of with the collection of heads again, but this time as dolls clumped together with this freaky centipede-like appearance. The hopscotch nickname, of course, coming from the way they walk, which is fucking awesome and creepy, I thought. Similar in appearance to the starfish is the drum monster, who brings with them the mechanic of being able to respawn nearby enemies. I love that they do this by banging the drum on their chest. Honestly, a couple times I just let him revive enemies because I just wanted to see him bang the drum on his chest. I thought it was great. Lastly, for the standard enemies is this monster that can appear as the shackled monster, or this other version that has these growths on its face that can glow up, which looks oddly beautiful, as does the disgusting animation of them licking our face, followed by Hinako frantically wiping the spit away. I love this so much, but fighting these things, on the other hand, was a pain in the ass. They're either jumping all over the place or are hyper aggressive. They're able to leap to grab you from far away. They are just relentless. Well, this would be a good time to address the hottest topic around this game, and that is the combat. The combat is complicated. On one hand, I like the melee-focused approach. I like the visual cue when there's an opening for a counterattack. Weapon degradation is not something that bothers me, being a huge fan of Dead Rising as well as the Zelda open world games. I like that there's a decent amount of weapons that all have a different feel and weight to them. But on the other hand, the stamina bar I found to be really brutal, with the twitchy movement of enemies having me oftentimes dodging more than needed, leaving me with no stamina to attack with. Having your attacks be stopped by hitting a wall was annoying, but not game-breaking, I thought. I mean, if I can make it through Dark Souls 2 multiple times, I can deal with this. The combat changes a bit when you switch between worlds, from the relatively normal world of Hinako's hometown, which is this game's version of the ever-so fog-filled town of Silent Hill, over to the other world, where your weapon options are limited, but you no longer have to worry about weapon durability. We will talk more about the other world in a little bit. The camera in this game is definitely not ideal, with you having to adjust it with the right stick even when you're locked onto an enemy, but my real issue with the combat was the difficulty. I started out on hard difficulty, and it was certainly a challenge. It was in this area in particular where I was getting frustrated, and with my healing items dwindling, I decided to change the difficulty to story. I think my issue was definitely that I was not using focus attacks enough, but the game told us that focus attacks would drain our sanity meter, so I was like, screw that, thinking sanity would be crucial. Especially early on, there are a couple areas where your sanity was being steadily drained, making me think sanity was going to be a struggle to maintain. But turns out there were not many more of these sanity draining areas as the game went on, so I felt like this game misled me a bit. It's odd, the story difficulty was still not a cakewalk, with enemies still being aggressive, but they just do very little damage. Like, my wife will play games like God of War on story difficulty, but I could not imagine her being able to deal with this. But for me, who's typically a tryhard, I ended up finding the story difficulty too easy for my liking. It feels bizarre that there's only 2 difficulties. I think story should be a tad easier for people who truly just want to experience the story, and then I think it would be nice if there was a difficulty between hard and story, which is where I would have liked to have been. Like I mentioned, I'm usually a tryhard. I've beaten every FromSoft Souls game and many other Souls-likes. I live for that feeling of satisfaction you get from beating a boss after dying 100 times. But horror games are stressful enough that I don't want that added frustration of Souls-like combat on top of the stress. Also, the bonfire mechanic of the FromSoft games replenishing your healing items keeps me sane. Finite healing resources in a Souls-like game creates a frustration that does not exist for me in Dark Souls, and is also one of the reasons why Bloodborne is only my 5th favorite FromSoft game. The other thing I did not like about the combat is that you are able to switch from hard to story, and after you die a few times, the game suggests that you do so, almost as if they knew this would be a problem for people, but then you're not able to switch back to hard once you switch to story. While I was frustrated enough at the combat to lower it to story, I did end up thinking I should give hard another try, but couldn't. I was especially thinking this during the boss battles. I really enjoyed the first boss battle that I did play on hard, and would have liked to have been able to flip it back to hard to fight the rest of the bosses, as they were way too easy on story difficulty. I understand I'm pretty much wishing I could have my cake and eat it too here, but I stand by those complaints. With that diatribe out of the way, let's talk about those bosses, which are again hit or miss for me. Our first real boss battle is against this twisted version of our friend Sakuko that manifests in the other world. I thought this boss battle was awesome. her priestess look with that crazy mouth hole, the mood with the red lighting, and it was a good challenge. I was still on hard at this point, and I felt adequately challenged, dying several times, but not to the point of frustration. She's got a good amount of attack patterns that I felt were fairly telegraphed, and a different phase where you need to chase her down and get some hits in, or else she launches a massive AoE attack. Visually, I thought this fight was fantastic, and mechanically, I thought this fight was good enough. Not reaching the heights of the best Souls-like fights out there, but better than I expected in a Silent Hill game. I was certainly struggling with my stamina in this fight, but was able to manage, and any complaint about stamina I look at as a complaint towards this game at large and not this fight in particular. Next up was Prego. I love the design of this boss. It fits with one of the major themes of this game, which some people argue is too on the nose at times, but man, this monstrosity of a bunch of pregnant bellies I thought was glorious. And to me was the boss that felt the most true to a Silent Hill design in my admittedly limited experience. Watching them squirt babies out was absurd, I loved it visually, and it also provided a nice wrinkle to the combat experience, with an enemy hatching if you don't attack the blob they birthed quickly enough. Having them vomit acid at us looks and sounds disgusting, I love it. My only complaint is that sadly I had the difficulty on story by this point, and with that the fight was way too easy. Prego does become a recurring enemy after this, which I enjoyed as I love the design, and just check out those big bellies glistening in this light here. As the story progresses and the two worlds are combining, we encounter them in the Japanese town with the stomachs looking rotten, and I gotta say, it felt so wrong bashing a pregnant stomach with a sledgehammer. That even just feels ridiculous saying those words, but I think that's an emotion you were supposed to feel while working through the conflict of this game. Next up is the otherworld manifestation of our friend Rinko. I love what we have visually here with the arena, fire, and
liquid hot magma.
This is unfortunately another fight that I found to be way too easy on story difficulty, so I got no satisfaction in beating this boss, and feel like I missed out on the true experience with the difficulty turned down. Shame on me, I suppose. This boss also just felt out of place in Silent Hill for me, more so than the other bosses. Next up is us fighting our parents. Yeah, parents suck. This was my least favorite boss battle. They're clearly leaning even more into the Souls inspiration with their version of Ornstein and Smough, I never knew how to pronounce it. But I found there to be nothing remarkable here. Our dad is basically the starfish enemy recycled, and our mom is just our mom with growths on her. The pregnant boss didn't bother me since it became a recurring enemy after we fought the boss, which is how it should be done if you're going to reuse enemies. But for our dad here, it felt like we already fought him throughout this whole game pretty much. This boss battle just felt lazy to me. I was hoping it would be a bit more difficult being that there was two of them and we were pretty far into the game at this point, but this was somehow the easiest boss battle for me. I again may have robbed myself of something more enjoyable by having the difficulty on story, but this fight and the cutscene that came after with them just walking away gave me the least satisfaction by far out of all the bosses. The last boss we're going to look at is the final boss of your first playthrough, the Bride, or Wedding Dress Monster. I'm a broken record, but this boss was way too easy on story difficulty. Shame on me for lowering the difficulty. But apart from that, I love the look of this monster. Her spawning the flowers on the ground that grab at you also looks sweet and adds some difficulty to the fight. My favorite thing is the peering blue eyes of the many fox statues in the background throughout this battle. I also love the lead up to this fight. Her floating in the fog as we pursue her looks so damn creepy. Her killing our parents, yeah, parents suck, and getting a look at her bisected head rules. Where my complaints come in is with us coming face to face with her again, and then the game cuts to the credits. This made sense thematically with the ending of your first playthrough, given that Hinako is still battling this internal conflict, but in the moment I was disappointed having it end like this, as I was thinking there was about to be an even more epic battle. The game ends this way on your first playthrough, along with an after-credits scene showing that we went on a killing spree on our wedding day. To be able to fight all the bosses and get the true ending, you need to play this game 3 times. While there is certainly an audience out there for this, that audience is not me. My buddy played this game 3 times with a smile on his face and loved what they did here, but I'm just not a big New Game Plus guy. When I finish a game, I put that game on the shelf, typically for a few years before I play it again. I had no interest in running this game back to get the other endings. Thankfully, we have YouTube to be able to watch the other endings, but this did not leave me satisfied when I finished the game. With that said, I think the story after one playthrough was good. It didn't compel me like Silent Hill 2's, but it kept me interested. I was curious what was happening. Is this a dream like Hinako thinks? Are we dead like Rinko says? Have we been missing from this town for some time? The game does a good job of making you uncomfortable with our companions doing questionable things to make us feel uneasy.
私も後から行くね。うん。じゃあね。裏切り者。
In the other world, the Fox Mask character who is our husband-to-be seems trustworthy, but our childhood doll constantly tells us not to trust him. I've seen the complaint that the game over-explains things, such as making it explicitly clear that the wedding dress monster is another side or version of Hinako, as we are clearly battling an internal conflict with ourselves. I would agree this game leaves less ambiguity compared to Silent Hill 2, where people have been debating meanings within Silent Hill 2 for 20 years, and even myself, I couldn't stop thinking about that game for weeks after I played it. I don't see Silent Hill F having that same effect, but Silent Hill 2 is also so special that I don't hate Silent Hill F for not living up to one of the greatest games of all time in Silent Hill 2. Even the things that are revealed to us in Silent Hill F, I don't think they're immediately obvious. There's a heavy theme of drug use in this game that is pretty much in front of our face from the beginning, but its effects on the story don't become apparent until the end. The wedding dress monster is initially presented as the fog monster, and then eventually is shown to have the same fox arm as us, making you wonder, and then is clearly shown to be us. There's an unraveling there. It's obvious by the end, but it's not obvious in the beginning. I feel like people are acting like the game tells you everything up front, right away, but I just don't think that's true. Speaking of the fox arm, this is a big change to the gameplay in the other world. At a certain point, we have our human arm replaced with a fox arm, but this is Silent Hill, so it's not like a cute fox arm, it's more like a wicked werewolf arm. This arm becomes our melee weapon in the other world. We can also go beast mode with it to go absolutely apeshit. This was definitely a point where the game no longer felt like Silent Hill, and I can only imagine how checked out longtime fans of the franchise were at this point. But that aside, it kind of rules with us now hunched over like a monster and making walls dissipate into blood. I thought it was funny the Fox Mask gentleman says we look breathtaking in this form. Meanwhile, this is what we look like. Gameplay aside, the process of us transforming into this appearance was fucking awesome and was certainly a highlight for me. Cutting our own arm off, getting the largest brand I've ever seen, and having our face cut off. This was so gruesome, it was wonderful. This whole creepy ritual feel to these scenes had me thinking this game has an Ari Aster feel to it, like the ritual in Hereditary, which I won't show in case you haven't seen the movie, as well as Hinako's flower transformation reminding me of Midsommar. I was ready to make this comparison as soon as I saw this image here when the game was first announced. Some other memorable parts of the game for me were the section in the other world where we would flip the light switch, which would change the room and add this nice red and green visual, as well as some good scares. Another memorable section was walking through our home and entering different versions of this hallway tied to the date on the calendar. A bunch of weird shit going on here, and there's an added layer of terror when you can't even feel comfortable in your own home. I think Silent Hill F does a great job of making things spooky scary. Things like our sister Junko's mask I thought were super creepy with how they light and frame these scenes. Several jump scares got me really good even when I was expecting them. There's little creepy stuff like Hinako mentioning that her and her friend Shu used to hang out right here, and then you look across the river and there's a boy and a girl staring at you. Small, inconsequential moments proved to be memorable for me, like reading this note about a scarecrow monster, and then this scarecrow off to the side disappeared after leaving my view, which had me questioning my own sanity. And then also this phone call of a man frantically thanking us for our patronage and then abruptly hanging up, which I found to be so uniquely unsettling. 毎度コーヒー機に預かり誠にありがとうございます。もしもし。What ties the horror together is, of course, the soundtrack, which was my favorite thing about this game, and I've been surprised to not see more praise for this soundtrack online, especially with the return of franchise legend Akira Yamaoka. The music we hear at the main menu and throughout the game is so creepy with the piano, while also sounding like something I could see the late great MF Doom using as an instrumental if you turned the BPM up. There's intense music that makes moments feel way more stressful. There's less intense music that helps set the stage for this creepy Japanese town, along with the sound effects of enemies. There's this awesome throat singing that I usually associate with Mongolia, but as an ignorant American, it feels fitting for the Japanese setting. Also, the nature of throat singing and how it sounds, I feel like it sounds like someone who is suffering. It works so well for a horror game. The song that plays at the beginning and end of the game is a banger, so sonically the game is bookended very well. yeah, I really dig the music in this game. Silent Hill 2, of course, also has incredible music that was unrelenting. It's like enveloping, like you can't escape it, which adds to the total dread of the game. Whereas Silent Hill F, the music does let up at times, so it did not have that same effect as Silent Hill 2, but I thought it was great nonetheless. Overall, I was mixed on this game, but I do think it is a good game that is worth experiencing. The combat is questionable, but the vibes are incredible. There are plenty of different areas to keep the game visually interesting, along with other things like the visual of flowers growing as the fog monster was on your tail, which was so damn cool and looked so good. There's a lot of detail put into this game. I enjoyed the little things like the map gaining detail as you discovered certain rooms, and the art on the many Omomori upgrades. There are subtle references to UFOs that are mentioned on these radio broadcasts, which listening to can lead to the UFO ending, like in previous Silent Hill games. And I just love that if you don't listen to all the broadcasts, you may not even realize there's this hidden layer of UFO influence on this game. I freaking love it. There's a lot packed into this game. Some for better, and some for worse. This game is certainly not for everyone, and I think that's okay. Silent Hill never was for everyone, but sadly this time around, it appears that longtime fans of Silent Hill are the ones that this game is not for. Whether or not this game deserves to have Silent Hill in its title, I think will be debated for some time. Konami has said that this is them taking the franchise in a new direction, but I've seen fans reject that notion. Which is kind of funny, but I guess it's fair to not give Konami the benefit of the doubt nowadays. The game certainly has Silent Hill DNA, but I also tend to agree with the sentiment that this game feels like it could have been its own IP, that Konami maybe slapped the Silent Hill name onto and added in that DNA so they could sell more copies. I can see both sides, and with my limited hands-on experience with the franchise, I feel as though it would be irresponsible for me to flippantly declare it one way or the other. Alright, I've talked for long enough. Let me know your thoughts on Silent Hill F down in the comments. I'm currently righting my wrongs and playing through the original Resident Evil 2 and 3 for the first time, so stay tuned for those reviews, and remember kids, don't do drugs.